Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is of particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by Brian's Logic, Refracted Curvature, 10th Man, Neil, did I miss anybody? Righteous Force, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning.
Hello.
Excellent stuff. Any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
You would need that for any antipodal assertions about the stars. I wanted to get that in from the pre-show, but yeah, if you can't measure Earth curve, you can't assert antipodal positions.
No, there's no Earth curve. It's a fundamental premise of being on a sphere that we have an Earth curve edge horizon blocking boats and buildings. And we've debunked it. The horizon is not Earth curve. We only have one horizon. And the horizon, in the begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculator, is geometric. It's claimed to block boats and buildings with its physical nature. And we've shown that it's beyond the geometric limitations of an Earth sphere radius 3959. Therefore, the horizon's not Earth curve.
Well, I think you'll find that you'll never experience it, and that is also the official claim.
We won't experience Earth curve. Touche. Yeah.
Hello.
No, that's not the official claim. That's a woven magic trick, but that's not the official claim. The official claim is you can measure it.
The official claim is Earth. Yeah. I see. The official. Hello, Armin.
Hi.
Hello. The official claim is the horizon is Earth curve and will physically block things, and you can measure it geometrically, derive R from it. We've debunked all of that.
And that's why the official claim is that we will never experience it.
Unofficial.
Well, it has to be, doesn't it? Neil deGrasse Tyson says it.
Listen,
That's not official, I don't know what isn't.
listen, how to debate a flat earther says it all starts with the horizon.
And ends.
Well, they say that, but then they say don't debate them right after that too. Don't they? Gain their trust.
Yeah, well, wordsmiths and magicians.
Moving on. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
I haven't come across any.
Yet another thing you'd have to have a radius to measure.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No, there's no evidence of that. There's evidence of a distance to its GP here on the ground, on Earth, but that's it.
Any evidence of what it is?
I'd like to know, though. Fascinating.
Me too.
We have evidence of what it's not.
Yeah, it's not a burning ball of gas in a sky vacuum. It's a violation of natural law.
Oh, the sun.
Yeah, any
Yeah, I
evidence
mean,
of
I know there's.
distance to it, Arwin?
No, sorry, I just didn't actually hear the housekeeping question. I thought it was about gravity, but it was about the sun.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No.
No,
Right,
only
any-
apparent distances.
No, and then carry on, I would.
I'm sorry, I said only apparent distances. That's it.
Fair enough. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Gravity is not definable, so how could you have the scientific evidence of it?
Well, does thinking of it make it scientific?
Does thinking of something as empirical make it empirical?
Right. What if you could just think of gravity as being scientifically proven?
If we think of,
That doesn't go to the scientific method, though.
if we think of these questions as rhetorical, will they be?
No, there won't be. There isn't any scientific evidence of gravity. There can't be, because it doesn't exist. At the moment, at present, according to mainstream pseudoscience, it's a purely mathematical belief. That's it.
Careful, you can't say it can't be. That's just, you know what I mean?
Well, it would have to exist for there to be, and it doesn't exist.
Right, but
Righteous, how's it defined? How's it defined currently?
I'm not talking about extreme rhetoric or what it is.
No, I'm not either. How's it defined currently?
How do you define it, Righteous?
I'm not, how do I put it? All I was looking at was the wording, okay?
No, that's what I'm asking. How is it defined currently before you can say what you said?
I mean, how can you ask me? How can you say to me that I can't say that about something? I can't say something that I can't say that something that we can't get scientific. We can't get scientific evidence for something that doesn't exist. You're telling me I can't say that. How could I ever say anything else?
I'll give you the definition as I would use it. You know, what would cause...
Is that officially what gravity is? Whatever that's your definition.
Hold on, Brian. Hold on. Go ahead, Righteous.
I would just say it's, you know, what's the cause of, you know, more dense things being in one direction than the other directions. Now, it could be a law. That's also a possibility, but it could also be a cause, right?
So what would you call that, since that's what you say this? What would you call that?
I'm not shy or afraid to say the word gravity.
Okay,
Yeah,
so do you know that, hang on, Ryan, please. So you know that word has already been used up, and you can't use that word for a different definition. So can you please describe gravity currently, and then you need to pick a different word for what you're using.
Well, I just stick to, how do I put it? I just stick to what most people are familiar with, right? Like, obviously, you won't find this in a dictionary or anything like that, right? It's just something people associate this phenomenon with, right?
So what you're saying is I could look at a brunette and call it a blonde.
Hold on. He said you can describe this phenomenon
What
with
phenomenon?
it. Hold on. Yeah, exactly. What phenomenon would that be?
Things going down?
I said more dense things being in one direction than the other directions.
Yeah, but that's already defined clearly as relative density equilibrium, and the cause is.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, I mean, you can call it relative density equilibrium or relative density disequilibrium. Either term, it's all relative, depending on the density of the object or substance and the medium. So it's a relative relationship.
I think he's referring to what causes the direction.
Yeah, but the main point is low density things don't always go up, and high density things don't always go down. It all depends on the density relation with what surrounds it.
Hold on. The question from Discord was, What gives it the direction? Well, that's the point. The direction, the vector, is relative. So you can't ascribe it what we see as up and down because that's relative to us. So it's dependent on the medium, i.e. the word relative in this description is appropriate because it is dependent. The vector might not be down.
Well,
Now,
a piece of wood would float on. Sorry, I thought you.
no, that's it. That's it's just as simple as that. Well, what's been described incorrectly as a force pulling things down and equilibrium, when a brick's on the ground, it's not in equilibrium in the heliocentric model with gravity description. What it actually is experiencing 1g. Yeah? And then free fall is described as being akin, like, orbital motion with 0g. So you've got the scale being moved by 1 point when it's in equilibrium, not moving. Fall arrest, if you will. Well, that's not moving, but it's still got 1g. Why? Well, because there's always a down. There's an ascribed vector to everything always with the word gravity. So then we get into the questions of what gives it the direction? What direction? There is no absolute direction in this regard. So direction, what do you mean? That's relative to what the medium's doing, like the egg. Well, the direction, the vector that it's taking could be up. Yeah, but it also could be down. Depends on the density of the medium, i.e. it's relative. Relative density, you don't need the equilibrium or disequilibrium bit. Disequilibrium is just when the egg is settling. You pour the salt in, it moves, eventually it reaches its equilibrium. That's entropy. Well, that process of being in disequilibrium is pretty short-lived. Likewise, if you pick up a pen and drop it, the process of you putting it into disequilibrium, making it more dense than the medium it's in, air, and then returning it from whence it came, that's a very short process. However, in the gravity description, it's always got 1g. The planet has got 1g. So therefore, there's always a force. That's the problem. There isn't. It's relative to the medium.
Yeah, you can drop a piece of wood through air, but that same piece of wood will float on water.
Wait, you're saying relative to the medium, but how do I put it? I'm trying to understand how you guys are saying it's like relative density and relative to the medium. Well, yeah, relative to, is it more dense in one direction or less dense in another direction? Is that how you're saying it?
The directions.
Well,
hold on. The direction itself will be decided by the medium, and then the object placed within the medium, relative to the medium, will give it a vector. A vector. Not up, not down, not automatically going to be one direction or opposing it, just relative to the medium and relative to the item placed in it.
Right, but the medium differences, right? That there's a medium difference, right? There's more dense in one direction and less dense in another direction of the medium, right?
Yep.
Incorrect. Gas has entropic effects, and it will disperse in all directions, no matter its density.
Correct.
I think he's getting at why is up, up, and why is down, down.
What's up to you isn't up to a different thing in a different medium.
Give an example.
Fish
Gas.
in water. People drown when they go deep sea cave diving, because once they're underwater, what is up to them isn't relative to the medium that they're in, because it's all relative to the direction they're pointing. There's no reference to give them up or down when they're in a cave, causing them to often drown. Well, you can't.
All right. Let's say we go to the bottom of the earth, right? Then it wouldn't be relative anymore, right? That would be like the ultimate down, right?
No. There's things that can bury themselves underneath that medium.
No, let's say we're at the limit of this reality at the bottom. Let's say we're there.
Where's that?
Okay.
Show it me.
Yeah,
Let's have a
now
look.
we're going
Hold on.
into
What's that?
fantasy.
Hold on. What's that look like?
Exactly. Where is that?
Where's that?
Exactly, Nathan.
Oh, I was just trying to simplify this.
Well, it's not simple. If I have your Wile E. Coyote at the top of a cliff that's precariously broken, and he stands on it, right? He falls through it because it collapses. Well, up until that point, he was on solid ground and in equilibrium. No, he wasn't. He was in fall arrest. He was actually more dense than the medium underneath the medium he was standing on. So he falls through the medium, as does the rock he was standing on. It reaches the ocean. Now, some of the moss breaks away from the rock and floats. He sinks all the way to the bottom of the ocean. Now, at that point, there are various different things that would start to bury themselves in the seafloor if they're dense enough. Well, what's below that? You tell me. Is there another thing? Is there another cliff like with the wider coyote in the air? Is there a cliff somewhere on that seabed that has got something beneath that could be less dense? I don't know, maybe. It's a very interesting subject, but I don't know the answers. Seems like you get to a point and then you go, well, you're in equilibrium now. Well, actually, no. There is definitely potential to have stuff below that. What it is might be various densities.
All right, let me word it like this then. Okay, let's say we're on the surface level of the Earth, right? Sea level, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter where. Somewhere on Earth. It could be on a mountain, doesn't matter where. Well, let's use a mountain example. We're on top of a mountain, and we see that the more dense things goes below us. Now, somebody that's at sea level, to him also, it seems like the most dense things go below him. So despite of being on top of a mountain, and another guy below, at sea level, below that guy on top of a mountain, there's still a general direction of where down is for both of them.
Not for if they're holding a helium balloon, then that's an up. Do you understand?
Yeah.
It depends on what they're dropping.
No. I'm talking about density. The helium balloon goes up because it's less. The helium balloon goes up because it's less dense. Less dense things up, more dense things down.
Yeah. So when you're describing this, you're only tying it to a relative position from your vantage point. And Brian's saying, well, what if you were a human helium balloon? Well, suddenly everything changes. Well, that's because you are tying it to your medium that you are most familiar with, air, and your density that you're most familiar with. Coincidentally, I'll say it one more time, ascribed as having 1g when in fall arrest or equilibrium.
It's about structural support of matter. That's what it is. I mean, I'll never stop beating this drum. It's about the structural support of matter. If the surrounding medium can't support the object, person, substance, whatever, then that substance, object, person will go down. If it can support it, then it will support it. Or if it's a lot more dense, then it will displace it upwards. Unless you're buried in concrete or something, then it won't, because it just comes into solid. But other than that, you will be displaced upwards.
Righteous, I don't understand your mountain thing. I mean, you got a mountain, and you know that the rock that the mountain is made of is more dense than the air around it. So you've got a shape of a mountain, and the shape is a mountain. And so you're saying, why is that higher than the sea level at the seashore, where it's just broken pieces of sand, small grains of sand? I mean, if the sand could be put together somehow with some kind of I don't want to say glue or anything, but let's just say you make something with sand, but it can hold the structure, then it's going to act like a mountain as well, because it's going to be held together like the mountain is.
Well, I was comparing it to Nathan's fish analogy, right? Like if you're a fish, right? I'm like, no matter where you are on the earth, dense things it will not change the direction of more dense things going in one direction. That's what I was comparing it to.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And?
Yeah,
and that's the vector I'm talking about that Rams pointed out.
That's not a single vector.
No.
That's relative to the medium.
I still don't see what the problem
Yeah,
with
but
Brian was.
the medium is based on the density, right?
Yeah. So you've got a plant that's growing at the bottom of the seafloor. Leaf detaches. Which way does it go? Does it go down?
To the less dense area. Oh no. If it's less dense, it goes up. If it's more dense, it goes down.
Oh, right. So it's very specifically dependent on the medium which way up and down are going to be described as. So from your vantage point, the leaf goes up. Well, why? It's at the bottom of it's the medium that dictated that then. So it's relative.
Right, but it's relative to the density of the medium.
Oh,
right?
So to be as concise as possible, you could almost just say relative density then.
Okay.
Correct.
Hold on.
Hold on, I've led him beautifully.
what?
Let me have my moment.
Right, but
Right, you said gravity. You said wrong. I like to go with what people are familiar with.
right, but I'm trying to
So
describe.
no, not
why.
right though. You're saying right like Virus
Don't
did
let him go,
yesterday.
Nathan.
No, I agree with you.
I'm not
but
letting him
just
go.
trying
He's
to-
saying right like Virus said okay yesterday.
Well, I just want to add one more thing. I agree with that part. I'm not disagreeing with that part. But I'm saying, why is it that the medium is more dense towards one vector and less dense the opposite of that vector?
Good question. So that is where you get into the intricacies of how the cause of this effect begins. Right.
Can I take this part?
And Brian
I would
said
prefer
that
Brian
cannot be
did. It was his
proven.
point. It was Brian that started this off. You're talking about a
Yeah.
second order effect of entropy. You want to know what's the beginning of that? Cut a long story short, God.
I was just going to say that. He's trying to find out the cause of entropy.
How did it all begin? What is
Right,
entropy?
this-
The process from beginning to end. The start of it into decay, if you want to look at it in its most crude terminology. What's the start of that? Well, that's the beginning of it all. Well, what you trace that back right to the beginning, what do you get to? Well, you get to the ontological primitives. That's where it leads you. So, you have to assess
I
it
get
for,
it.
will I ever...
Sorry.
Will I ever ascertain the cause of an entropic effect? Answer, in my opinion, no. You're not going to get to the beginning because the beginning of all of these processes is the start of everything. That you're trying to ascertain the start of it. If you're trying to look at the start of entropy, what's the beginning of that process? Well, that's the start of everything if you wind the clock back long enough. Well, what do you get when you come to the ontological primitives? Did nature create it all? Or was there an intelligent agency? That's the only question. There aren't any other questions. There aren't any other answers. Those are it. That's it. Did nature create everything out of nothing? That's the Big Bang story. Divide by zero, get everything in existence. A Big Bang. Or, do you require intelligence? Well, you look at experimental validity to the fact that you need a knower to have information in the first place, and without information you've essentially got nothing at all. Then what do you need for information again? Oh, a knower? Well, that's it. So the beginning of it all starts with a knower. What's another way of putting a knower? Somebody who knows something. At the start of it all before there wasn't anything. So who's that knower going to be? I don't care what you call that either. You call it God, call it a knower, don't care. There's a knower at the beginning of the process for information to exist.
Simple. It says
I
in the
think-
Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Started everything.
Then they'll claim that the
I-
Noah created the Big Bang.
Maybe.
I think what
Maybe,
Royce
maybe,
was
but
asking-
that doesn't
yeah.
change the ontological primitives. If you want to shoehorn in a heliocentric version of God creating the Big Bang, then that doesn't change the ontological primitives. You're just speculating about what God did in that instance.
Makes no
Yeah,
sense.
I agree.
But I think Righteous is. I could be wrong, Righteous. You can correct me. I think what Righteous was asking was how come it's more dense. Let's just say the air is more dense close to the surface of Earth, and water is more dense down at the bottom. Is that what you're asking? How come the medium is more dense down the way and less dense up the way?
In a sense.
Well, the simple answer to that would be density, but the actual, if you want to talk about, let's say, gas or liquids, the answer is temperature. Temperature, the colder something is, the colder something is, the more dense it becomes. So like you're not going to have as much air up high because the temperatures, they also have gas cycles, but the temperatures don't allow it. It's too cold.
So we've isolated a cause that can affect that, right?
No, it's part of the triangle. It's not a cause. It's integral. It's not a cause, though. You can't say temperature causes it. It's just part of the
You
description.
need gas for temperature.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It is a part. That's right. But
Yes.
as a part, it's still a cause, right?
Well, no. In the same way, you can't say PV equals nRT is causal. You can't say that because you've got an equation that describes it. You can take out aspects of it and describe them as causal. And in the case of heat, Am I being too unkind, Brian? Can you call heat a cause without the heat?
Well, you need gas, you need matter to heat or to cold, if you know what I mean. You need matter to create that type of heat.
Isn't it
It's
a given?
Not convect.
Based on the fact that we can't reach absolute zero, isn't it a given that it's always going to have a certain degree of energy, and therefore the heat factor is just our way of quantifying that aspect of something that has it always without exception. So therefore, our quantification in terms of heat is just an arbitrary description we've applied to something that's occurring always. So again, it's back to me saying, well, no, it's just part of the description in the law. It's not like volume, PV equals nRT, where you can say, well, no, without the container, you can have no pressure. Therefore, you can ascribe a causal link to that. But you can't do that with heat. Well, maybe I'm wrong, but I'd love to be corrected.
You need to have something to heat. You need to.
Wait a second.
With conductive and convective heat, you need matter. Do you know what I mean?
We already have an experiment with heat. Remember boiling point of water at sea level? The cause being the temperature?
Yeah,
and
but
the
that's
control variable being the pressure.
That's no. Hold on. The effect in that instance is boiling. That's the effect that you're observing, and heat being the cause in that instance isn't the same as saying when we have anything occurring ever, we've got stuff that has energy as part of it. Now that will never be at absolute zero, so it won't ever be the case that hasn't got a certain amount of energy. So to say because it's always got a certain amount of energy, we're going to say that the inherent amount of energy that it's got and the variant thereof that we can measure is somehow causal. I don't like this. It just doesn't sit well. Adam's going to join. Hopefully he'll back me. Hold on. Adam's here and he's probably been listening. Hopefully he'll back me or tell me I'm an idiot. We'll see.
Uh-oh. I haven't been listening.
Okay. I can summarise it in about 10 words. If you're describing how you achieve different densities of mediums, various entropic effects, can you say that heat is a cause of that?
A cause of the medium?
In a way, yeah.
Category error.
I think so too. Yeah.
Category error.
Temperature is the more correct answer.
Brian, can you rephrase the question for Adam, just so we get clarity before he answers?
Yeah. Righteous was asking, basically, how come in a medium, the more dense is always towards the bottom and less dense is always towards the top? And I said, if it depends on the medium, gas or liquid or whatever, but it's temperature related. That's what I said.
No, so, yeah, category error. If we take any medium, whether it's solid, liquid, or gas, and we add energy in the form of heat, temperature, then that is transferred to the molecules. It makes them more excitable. That's what causes phase changes. That's what makes things less dense because they got more energy. So, but that isn't the thing that's defining its density. It's just a factor that can affect density of the individual object in terms of how much energy each atom's got.
But when you say can affect, that means cause.
No.
Why
it's
not?
It's not causing it to be a liquid.
Yeah, that's how I see it.
It's causing it to be less dense.
When you're describing an effect, so if you describe a phase change as an effect, and then you say, well, heat, then you've described an effect. Whereas if you're describing an inherent property, and I see heat, the amount of energy any particular molecule's got at any given time, which can be varied by you, isn't going to describe its overall attributions as a gas, solid, or liquid, or plasma for that matter. So therefore, how can you call it a cause?
No, you're. Adam is right.
Isn't it just a control?
It's not changing why the reason why something. Not. All right, sorry, my sister told me to keep my voice down. It's not the reason why it's causing why more dense things to go down and less dense things to go up. It's just affecting the actual density. So that wouldn't be a cause of why more dense things go down, and vice versa.
Right.
So guys, I'm glad Adam pointed that out.
Yeah, I think that's good summary.
Give us a couple of minutes.
Go ahead.
Let me have a couple of minutes here with Righteous.
Okay, before you do, hold on, just before you do. So, number one, everyone else try and keep interruptions to a minimum. Everyone who's watching live, 100 people watching live. The only reason this show's got anyone watching live is because people share. So please share the show. Go ahead, Anthony. Everyone else, button it. Righteous,
All right,
you're
so-
going to be grilled. Go ahead, Anthony.
I'm not going to
Wait, I
grill
thought
him.
we're just having a chit chat.
Yeah, I'm
Where's
not
the
gonna,
grilling
I'm not
coming
going to grill him. I just want you to
just having a
follow me.
chit-chat here.
Oh, okay.
I want you
That was a bit too much of an introduction to this. Then go ahead, Anthony. My bad.
Okay, so Righteous, you've seen the density tower with the cherry tomato in it many times before, correct?
Correct.
All right, I want you to make the volume of the tower into the size of a swimming pool in your mind, but I want you to preserve the height of the layers. So your swimming pool is filled with the 9 layers of fluid, and they've all preserved the height within that swimming pool. So it's no longer a tower, it's now a density swimming pool, and there's lots of volume for us to play with. Now I want you to imagine that we've got 10,000 cherry tomatoes that are all identical. They've all got the exact same volume and the exact same density. And we're now going to start pouring them in one by one into the swimming pool that's got all these layers, these 9 layers. Each cherry tomato is going to sit in the layer of dish soap because they're all identical. Why is it when we keep pouring them in one after one after one, why is it that they fill the swimming pool laterally and they don't fill the swimming pool up or down, and there's no up or down direction in this example?
You want me to say relative density?
No, I want you to explain why there's not up or down.
I know, but I'll tell you later.
Yeah, just maybe to follow the
Because
question.
volume, there's more volume for it to go like left or right.
Correct. So the medium has got more volume to it, and we're putting more volume into that medium, and it's finding its level initially, but then laterally filling out, isn't it? So if we were to just inject it straight into that layer, so that it didn't fall through any of the mediums, and it was just set at that layer of dish soap, it would laterally go sideways. Now you could argue, well, that could be the up and down, and that's spreading out sideways because of whatever. And I could say, well, it's simply because we're putting more cherry tomatoes in that medium, and that's where it's going sideways, because it can't go any higher because the water's less dense than it, and it can't go lower because the milk's more dense than it. So it's being squashed into that position relative to the mediums around it. But the key point is we're going laterally here. We're not going up and down. So if there's no vertical movement, and we've only got an example of lateral movement by virtue of volume, and we're filling up that volume with mass or matter, whatever word you want to use, we no longer have the up and down. Does that change your perspective for where the up and down comes from?
Not really, no.
But we haven't got an up and down in this example.
Right, but we just introduced another variable, the volume, right?
Yeah.
So it's still.
But it's the volume of the medium in question that makes it, because like if we were to make the milk more voluminous, it still wouldn't affect the tomato because the tomato wouldn't touch the milk. If we did more water, it wouldn't affect the tomato because it's less dense than the tomato. But if we gave the dish soap more volume and then started filling the tomatoes up in that volume, then your tomatoes are going to fill that volume, but it's going to fill laterally. So there's no up and down there, and it's caused by the medium. So now we've got the example of lateral accelerations, but not up and down. We've got lateral, haven't we? So there is no up and down, and that's a demonstration that shows it, and it's caused by the volume of the medium in question.
But I'm not talking. How do I put it? But there's still a density layering effect, right?
Caused by, I'm going to use the word loosely, caused by mass or mole or energy, as Einstein would say, or whatever word you want to use to describe that quantification of matter. Now, this is like the ping pong ball compared to the golf ball. Both got similar volumes, but very different substance to them, and we can call that a variety of words, all of which are kind of abstract but descriptive. That it's the matter in question, the amount of matter in that volume that's governing the behavior of the things that are in it. So what your question is, well, why is it going up and down? It's not really going up and down. It's really reacting with its medium. And we're manipulating that medium to cause the accelerations that are in it. And the answer to your question is mass or matter or energy or whatever word you want to use to describe it. But that is the reason why we've got the direction.
Agree. I disagree with that.
Can I please say something?
You can, but I just want to do a quick super chat shout out so then you can disagree and then I will if it's different. Godzilla37, thanks for the super chat. It says, denser things go down, question mark. Is that why so many of these anti-flat earthers are so short? Question mark. Thanks for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Yeah, the way I would view that would be very simplistic. You can fill up the swimming pool with milk, and you can put a layer of cherry tomatoes on top of it. Why? Because the milk can structurally support the tomatoes. If you put vegetable oil in and put tomatoes in, they'll sink to the bottom because it can't support the tomatoes. You know, so if you can fill up, put more milk in, the tomatoes will rise. It's a structural issue.
We can change the nouns that we use for these layers. So instead of saying lamp oil and rubbing alcohol and vegetable oil, we could just say up, and then we can say more up and more up, or down and more down, or more down. So the term that we use to describe these things could be descriptive, and they could be nouns. They could be lamp oil or rubbing alcohol. It doesn't change the fact that there's a number attached to it, and that number is linear in its function. 7 is bigger than 6, but it's not as big as 8. Why is it that way? It's just the way it is. But these numbers or names, they're all relative to each other. So go on, Nathan, why do you disagree?
Well, because you're giving a description and giving all the disclaimers about how abstract it is, and then at the very end saying that that's the reason. Well, again, when you get to reason, you're ascribing causal attributes to your descriptions, which isn't reasonable.
I'm only describing it as abstract because these words that we use to describe are so convolutedly they're not easy to describe within science, because mass doesn't mean the same as mole doesn't mean the same as energy doesn't mean the same as matter, but all 4 of them can be used interchangeably to describe the reason for why the density tower.
Well, that's a big problem. So when you're doing anything in science, you have to be hyper-specific about what you're talking about. And if you're describing a cause, it's got to have certain things ascribable to it. Number 1, it's your independent variable when you're experimenting. Number 2, it is what you think actually causes it. And number 3, it's got to be real. You've got to be able to not just define it, actually be able to physically show it in reality so that you can vary and manipulate it.
That's why the phrase relative density is used, because that is the thing that we're manipulating. So what they call mass or energy or matter, we just call relative density because that is the descriptive of what we're observing. It is the density of the medium that's causing it. Whether we call that mass or energy, who cares? But essentially, if we manipulate the density of the medium or the object, then acceleration occurs. Well, that is the explanation, and that is the right wording. That's why the direction is really more and less dense, and it's not up and down.
Yeah, I agree.
And when you say more or less dense, there has to be a more or less dense than what?
Than the medium or the object in question.
Exactly. It's specific to each.
That's why it's always relative.
Exactly.
Hello, Chocolate.
I don't know about that density tower. Bob knows.
Morning, guys.
That to the side.
You say that again, Neil. You don't know about the density tower?
Or don't.
Bob Nodell tossed that to the side like it didn't even matter.
Can I go back to the temperature issue after John?
You can. Yes. Go ahead, Brian.
John was going to say something about the current thing, so I go back to the temperature issue after that.
I think this whole conversation is a bit convoluted because we're trying to mix how-why questions with what is questions, and then asserting things that we don't really know. Now, what we can say is that we're witnessing a proportionality. There is already a law in effect that describes that proportionality. What are we doing?
Well, what if what if mainstream science has deliberately used any name possible other than the word density to describe the mass or the matter or the volume or the mole or the energy or whatever these words are? If there's a buzzword that they can't use because they don't want to tell us that it's density, right? They'll use anything to describe it but density, right? And is it possible that they are using any other word possible with very loose definitions so that they don't really help us in any way and you end up being more confused than you... But rather than admit that it's density related.
No,
if they just use density, there wouldn't be any confusion.
No, what they do is they originally ascribed a downward vector, always in effect, called gravity. Then they replaced that because you couldn't actually demonstrate it in reality. It was debunked by gas with the bending geodesic in space-time, a medium that didn't exist and was invented in mathematics to get around this need for a force with a downward vector, when in reality, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of what you're actually investigating, you're trying to figure out what the cause of entropy is.
Correct.
Well, what I would say to John's statement there is, no, a greater density, a greater concentration of matter, a concentration of matter of greater density will support a concentration of matter of lesser density. I mean, it couldn't be more simple. I don't see why there is even a problem with this. It's like, you know, sand will be supported by rock, but it won't be supported by air. You know,
that's not strictly true. Oh, hold on, Brian. That's not true. That's actually not true. Let me just correct Brian. You ever opened a bag of muesli, Brian?
Yes.
What's at the top
That's
of
not sand, Nathan.
Well, I know it's not sand, but it's similar in terms of you've got various different densities of stuff within that bag. What happens? Well, you end up with all the nuts and the bigger stuff at the top.
Well, I don't see that happening. I don't remember having loads of stuff. Like, that comes down to the fact that all the smaller stuff will fall through the gaps between the bigger stuff.
Yeah, correct.
And ends up compacting. That's what
correct.
happens.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Brian, I'm agreeing with your structural support. I'm starting to really agree with Brian here.
Hold on a minute. Before we go forward, when you point out more dense to less dense, you are still asserting a proportionality. We already have a natural law in place that is describing a proportionality. It's called entropy.
Correct.
Yeah, but entropy is a description.
Yes, that's correct also.
So, entropy, just like, I mean...
What more do you think you're going to get? This is kind of where me and Rob got to last night. I think it's a foolhardy mission to think at the moment that you're going to get any more than a description of what always happens.
You're being asked, what else do you want?
Sorry.
I might just reiterate what you're being asked. So you're being asked, what else would you like to achieve, Brian?
Yeah, but it's not. But see, why is someone being labelled with trying to achieve more, or trying to achieve something that they haven't claimed that they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, you are. Hold on, yes, you are. Yeah, you are. Structural support. Yes, that's your claim. That's your claim.
Well, you're not leaving me. Yeah, but leave me finish. Leave me finish what I'm saying. Yeah, structural support is what I'm claiming. But what the point that's been missed here is what I'm trying to do is describe what we see in a more honest fashion. That a layman's term that everyone can understand, because it is actually very simple.
It's just not right.
What caused all this to happen is a different thing.
Let's pull apart this structural support claim. So, what's structure, Brian?
Structure is structure is to do with, if I had to go into the dictionary definition of it, the structure would involve kind of tightly compacting of matter. Like they use structure to build things. Like things have to have enough structure. If they're going to build a building, they have to put in steel into the building and concrete and make sure it has enough structural support for whatever is going to be in there.
Do you want a definition?
Go ahead.
But the noun, the arrangement of and relations between the parts or elements of something complex.
So,
that's its structure.
So it's the connections between things ready to describe structure then, Brian?
What do you mean?
Well, it's how things fit together as part of a whole, and that whole is the structure.
Yeah.
Right. So how things are connected together.
Yeah, but
the better connected together they are, the more structural support they'll give, right?
Well, the more compacted, for any concentration of matter, the more compacted it is, the more structural support it can give to all other concentrations of matter that are less dense.
Right. So conceptually, with a lot of disclaimers, I can appreciate your analogy when you say structural support. Because you're going to say at 14.7 psi, that's a lot of gas in a very relatively small area. Therefore, there's a lot of them, within a couple of millimeters, there's gas banging up against each other all the time. Therefore, because there's a lot of them all banging up against each other all the time, that as a whole provides, and then this is the problem, structural support. Now, as an analogy, I get it. The problem is that that word means connected together, and gas has no bonds.
Well, if you can find a better term that people can take on board, then off you go. But every other term that I use ends up being kind of convoluted. I could say density support. I could say density resistance.
What's wrong with pressure?
Because pressure, I don't like pressure. Because pressure involves a pushing, involves a pressing.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, concrete's not pressing up on me.
Yeah.
I'm
Hold on.
standing on
Hold on.
concrete.
Why don't you like that? When that's exactly what you're in need of. When you're describing displacement, for instance, a helium balloon being displaced. So you need something to be pushing on it then.
Yeah, but is the concrete on the floor underneath me pushing up on me, or am I pushing down on it?
That's solid.
Stopping you from moving.
But we're into a different convention when you describe it with solids, because you can easily describe it as having structural support rather than having a displacement effect. Well, when you move over to a gas and describe something being displaced, you're then into not needing the lattice work structure of the concrete to describe how it's forcing it up, in the case of a helium balloon. You need it to have something literally pushing on it. And pressure, for me, is absolutely perfect for that. But you prefer structural support. I don't like the word.
Yeah, you want me to say pressure support. Well, I'll never say that.
No, just pressure.
Just pressure.
Pressure is a force, right?
No, I'll never say that. Never, ever.
I don't even understand why we have to make a distinction between all these things. Because I understand. I don't know. We've done this before.
To avoid confusion.
Yeah, but I mean, I understand what Brian means when he says structural support. He's not asserting that it's a structure. That's why he's using it as a description, saying structural, because of the way it's, if we're talking about a gas, the way the gas has I don't know, like if we take an example, right? Let's take the sulfur hexafluoride in the little tank, right? And you put the little boat on top of it. Why is it sitting on there?
Because there's pressure underneath it, pushing up.
Right. So it's the same thing as saying it's structurally supportive enough to hold it up there, right? I don't see why it's a problem.
No, there isn't. No, Chocolate, I agree. And I gave that disclaimer when I said to him, no. I even gave the analogy on his behalf to make it make sense, because it's not like I don't understand why he's describing it that way. I totally get it. I'm describing how compacted all the gas particles are together. Therefore, as a combination of lots of, if you could see them, there's lots of them in the way of stuff to displace other things up, or in the case of the sulfur hexafluoride, to stuff it on top with a tinfoil boat. You can show that because there's a lot of it in a small area. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Structurally, it's supported, but the word just is ambiguous. That's the problem.
Well, I can give you an example.
I get it. You don't like structure. He doesn't like pressure.
The difference is,
hold on, just Brian, then Sleeping Warrior. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I'm using the word structural support because people can. It's an intuitive thing. People can take that on board, and it makes sense to the layman immediately. I don't care about the specifics of the definition of the word structure. I care about the message getting across and an explanation to people, a description that can explain something to people in a simplistic way, as opposed to what they get, which is Einstein. I'm detailing the effect. I'm describing the effect in a way people can understand in a very simplistic way. And it makes total sense to people. I would say 80% of the people have said it there. Even ballers have actually said to me, yeah, well, that makes a bit of sense.
Let Sleeping Warrior respond to you, but
I think I'll Sleeping Warrior.
QE's not here to give a quote, but I'll butcher it slightly, which is, words have meanings. Choose your words carefully. It's important. You're saying it's just, well, I'm using it as a way of describing it, but I'm sure you appreciate, given that this is a debate platform, that the semantics of that word and how it's defined are critical here. Outside of here, when you're talking to Joe Norman, you're just trying to get a concept across. That's why I pegged it as an analogy rather than a description.
And you know I love you, Brian, but when you did say that, I did wince a little bit. Like, we do have to be a little bit more specific with the definitions of the word. You can't just use the word and then when somebody says define it, it's like, I don't care what it means.
Look, guys,
But,
let me have
but again, he knows how I feel about this whole thing.
Hold on,
so it's like, I get it.
Just give way to. Hold on a second.
Brian.
Hold on.
I won't, Neil.
Just give way to Sleepy Warrior a second, everyone. Go ahead, Sleepy Warrior.
So the converse explanation would be that when the word structure is used, that wouldn't imply a force. It would imply that there's a resistance to an acceleration because it's like a barrier. Whereas, and it's not within Newton's first law of motion, which is what they always apply. So if we use the word force, a resistance like slow, because it is causing the acceleration or the deceleration in this case, that when we use the word force or pressure, then that's consistent with Newton's first law of motion, and that causes acceleration. So we can use the word pressure as a force to accelerate mass and to decelerate mass in line with Newton's first law of motion. And I do totally accept that it's a bit confusing initially, and you can use structural support to make the point. But once you've got the point, the force that's created is from pressure. And once you've got the pressure and the force, you're then within Newton's first law of motion, and then you can use that argument against them because to them, density is just a scalar. It's not a force, is it? But if it causes acceleration or deceleration, then it is a force, and the pressure is the force in question. And we can demonstrate that, and that's what the egg does.
Yeah, but I don't care about Newton's laws of motion.
I don't either.
No
hold on,
offense.
just before you go, Brian, hold on. Everyone, hello. Go ahead, John. You were posting things. I'd rather you just said them.
Well, it's context, really, because it depends on who you're talking to and what you're talking to them about. For Brian to use structural support between us is acceptable because we understand what he's talking about. The problem comes is if a baller comes along and that's made as a claim, all they have to do is post that gas has no structural support, and the claim becomes fallacious.
Correct.
Yeah, I debunk that immediately with the fact, absolute fact, that objects weigh more in a vacuum. So straight away, right, I'm taking away their claim. I've said this to loads of ballers, and they've actually said, well, that makes sense. They said to me, right? They didn't leave go of gravity, but they were stumped and stopped in their tracks. They didn't come back and attack me on the definition of structural, because it's like this, right? Right? If I'm falling through the air, I'll stop when I hit something. When will I stop falling?
When you hit something that structurally can support you.
No, that's not true. You'll stop falling when your density. When your density is equal to the medium that you're in, and we see that demonstrated with Felix Baumgartner's stratospheric Red Bull jump.
But that's not true.
No, hang on. Initially, his fall was at 800 miles an hour, but by the time he got into Earth's atmo, he pulled his parachute cord at just 120 miles an hour, and that's because the density of the medium he's falling through is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, and that's decelerating him. So if that continued, because the ground wasn't in the way, and the gas got more and more dense and more dense, eventually he'd become the egg, and if it got more and more dense, he'd then start to fall back up again.
Yeah, so there was more structural support for him the closer he got.
Correct.
Or density.
Hold on. That structural support you're describing there, Brian, when it's described to you by Anthony, what's happening is the actual convention that's used to describe that would be the increase of pressure going down as he falls towards the ground. So you're saying it would reach a point where the pressure, the air pressure in Anthony's example, was so high it could actually provide support. Now, I'm not sure if that's technically correct, but it's just an example.
No way.
No, I'm not saying it's true. I'm just saying it's an example
Equilibrium.
where you reach equilibrium at a certain pressure, a certain air pressure.
We must remember.
I disagree with that, guys. Even in your analogy there, no. The only structure in gases, like oxygen...
No, listen, he'd end up becoming...
Hold on, just let Adam go. Go ahead, Adam.
The only structure in gases are the covalent bonds between, so like in oxygen, the two covalent bonds it shares. There is no structure. So in your example there, where you increase the pressure, so there's that many molecules that you are colliding with you, what you end up doing there is exactly that, increasing the collision rate to such an extent that it impedes you. But no structure offered from...
Yeah, but hang on.
Well, let me finish the
Let him
sentence.
finish.
No structures is provided from the gas. The greater the concentration, the pressure of the gas, the more collisions you're having.
Yeah, but
that's
Oh, come
now,
on. He's nearly there, Alex. He's nearly there. 2 more seconds.
That will slow you down, yeah, but it's not providing a structure in any sense of the word. In terms of when we talk about relationships with liquids and solids, the word structure is wholly applicable, I think, there. When we talk about it with a gas, we are just talking about an increase in the number of collisions.
Yeah, but no, ahead, not correct. It's oversimplified. As the pressure increases, there is a phase change from gas into liquid.
It's not going to stop somebody.
Hang on.
Yeah, well, then that's different.
Hang on. Yeah, so as pressure increases, we start to get liquefaction, don't we? And as it changes phase...
No.
Hang on,
He's not taking it to a phase change. It's just saying the amount of collisions impacting with a person, as you go up in gas pressure, that means an up in amount of collisions. That's all gas pressure is, the number of collisions on the walls of the container. Well, in this case, you've got a gas, and you've got it having a number of collisions with the person falling through it. As the pressure increases, then the amount of collisions on the person increases. Now, if that pressure continues up and up and up and up and up and up and up, higher and higher pressure, there are more and more and more collisions on the person. Now, what Adam is saying is that's not ever structural support. It just reaches a point where there's enough collisions to counteract the solid in this example. Now, if you then take that to a phase change, you're talking about something very different at that point. Hypothetically, I don't think this is even possible. I don't think there's any amount of air pressure that could suspend you. That said, thinking about it, there's great big wind tunnels, right, that just replicate people in free fall. So I don't see why not. Just get to a point where there's enough gas pressure pressing on you to impede your fall.
Okay, so because I got interrupted, I didn't get to finish my point. My point was that as the pressure increases, gas becomes liquid. And ultimately, if he was to fall into the water, we can all accept that he would have stopped accelerating, wouldn't he? He would have basically floated. If he'd have survived the impact, he'd have floated, wouldn't he? Or sunk, whichever, depending on how buoyant he was in that position or relative density he was in that position. But the point is that demonstrates that as he's falling through the gas, if the gas was to continue getting more and more dense, to directly answer Brian's question, he would eventually stop accelerating.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that is matter is matter. It has 4 different states that we are aware of, right? You have plasma, gas, liquid, solid, right? And a lot of the matter, well, it basically with enough messing around with temperature and different things like that, you can basically switch even the least dense, like helium and stuff like that, into a solid. Takes a lot of messing around and effort, but you can do it. But the point is that matter is still matter. It might have different states, but it's still matter. You need matter to make up structure. I mean, the term structural is just very much, it's an intuitive type thing with people. When you say structural, they think of something that has structure that is supporting, so structural support. It's like you're getting the point across to people very simply.
The only real problem, Brian, I don't mean to cut you, man. The only problem is that you say structure, people just imagine or just think about a structure, right? Even if you're saying you're using it as a description and saying structural, people think structure. Well, structure means a solid.
With that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you. Smash the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, hit the PayPal link, and all that good stuff. Of course, a massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!